An Inconvenient Truth was a movie about a lecture from Vice President Al Gore concerning the climate crisis. There is a genre of movies that consists of people giving lectures or being interviewed for a lengthy time, or even having a conversation like My Dinner with Andre. I inadvertently found myself on both the production end and in front of the camera of a movie called Lucifer 2000.
Is there a group of men and women out there who are secretly controlling our finances, our media, communications, and every aspect of our lives? Well, my two guests think that there very well might be.
I shot it as an episode of my community television show in Long Beach, California, with Anthony J. Hilder and Jordan Maxwell. Well, after the show, I found out later that they edited the movie together, put different clips of different programs in it as well, and sold copies of the show under the name Lucifer 2000. I'll talk more about that later. But I did not post the entirety of my interview with Jordan Maxwell and Anthony J. Hilder on my YouTube channel simply because I did not want to endorse their conspiracy theories. Well, as the years went on and social media matured to include streaming videos that play right on your television set no matter where you are in the country or the world, I noticed that many videos on YouTube featuring Anthony J. Hilder and Jordan Maxwell were playing. In fact, they've become very well-respected personalities. Unfortunately, both of them have since passed away. Well, I do not want to engage in the exhausting and ultimately futile and probably ill-advised temptation to ask anyone to remove their videos. No, instead I decided to set up the video camera, and on this episode of Psycho Cinema Therapy Theater, I will get in front of that camera and tell you the background story behind this interview, in addition to clarifying my views on conspiracy theories and legends. The subtitles will be fully blazing so no one will misunderstand a single word. Stay tuned. On this episode of Psycho Cinema Therapy Theater, I will take you behind the scenes of Lucifer 2000.
Well, they got something going here. You remember War of the Worlds?
The radio broadcaster?
Yes, by Orson Welles, 1939.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Well, we've got something else coming in. They're going to make the announcement that they have discovered extraterrestrial intelligence. And this will frighten the people of the world and say, oh my God, how can we deal with this as a nation? But we can only deal with it as the United Nations. Yes, we're going to have a United Nations, a one-world government. Yeah, it's necessary, they're going to say. It's absolutely necessary. Why?
Tell me.
To defend ourselves from those little green men, from the aliens that are out there.
In this clip from Lucifer 2000, you see me, the narrator, trying to hold it together while my two guests, Jordan Maxwell and Anthony J. Hilder, basically talk about everything from the government faking a space alien invasion in order to get all the countries to give up their sovereignty, to talking about secret societies, specifically Harvard and Yale and the Skull and Bones.
Some of these Luciferian groups, and I say Luciferian, I mean it, like George Bush is a member of the Skull and Bones.
Yeah.
Now, in the Skull and Bones fraternity, this is the Faustian financial fraternity that started up at Yale University in 1832. Came over here as a bounce off of the Jacobin Society, which was involved in the French Revolution and the Reign of Terror. At Yale University, they have a structure, and you can go there. Anybody can go there and see this structure they call a tomb. Inside the tomb, they have their initiation, and the fellows, they lay down in a coffin. And George Bush was one of them. They lay down in a coffin nude, and they're born again into this satanic order. It's the ritual. It's been there. William Buckley Jr., the Harrimans. Yeah. Conservatives? No. George Bush isn't a conservative.
Never had.
Ronald Reagan is not a conservative. In fact, Ronald Reagan is so far left. I mean, can I say this? Ronald Reagan is not a conservative. He never was a conservative. He is not a conservative. He never will be a conservative. In the early days, they used to call him Red Ronnie. It's as simple as that.
Absolutely.
He was in the United World Federalist for 13 years.
Now, Lucifer 2000 was Anthony J. Hilder's name for this video. And this was not a video that I would necessarily promote except as part of, to show the variety of different subject matters that I will discuss on my program. At the time it was called Mars Hill, the show that looks at old things that have affected our lives as well as new ideas that are still affecting our lives. Brought about, of course, by the name Mars Hill from the Bible, the book of Acts, where people would meet to discuss all the new things, and that's how I sense my program. And at the time, I was involved with the Humanist Association of Los Angeles, and there were some other free-thinking groups at the time, and there was a man by the name of Tim Leadham who was putting together a book called The Book Your Church Doesn't Want You to Read, and getting all sorts of free thinkers from Steve Allen to Jordan Maxwell, who was on my show, Dan Barker, the Freedom from Religion Foundation. And so I went ahead and I threw my hat in the ring as well, but mainly because he had so many interesting guests, I wanted to interview them for my program. And the program that I did with Jordan Maxwell, I got to know Jordan Maxwell, of course, through Tim Leadham, because Tim Leadham was the one putting together the book. And when I mentioned I was actually trying to get Steve Allen, which I did get Steve Allen. And you can see the interview that I did with Steve Allen that I've called Civilized Discourse, playing also on this channel elsewhere. In fact, you can click the link at the end of the program to watch Civilized Discourse, but Steve Allen was also a part of this book. So Tim Leadham was instrumental to some of the early guests I got, and people recognized them when they were shown on TV. Even though public access, some of your shows get shown at odd hours, like 3 in the afternoon on a weekday. Who's going to be on, who's going to be watching that? Well, they're probably in the middle of work. But I actually had people approach me in the apartment building that I worked at, or that I lived at, telling me that they had saw my program. So I was glad that it was getting watched. And of course, you can see the movie Lucifer 2000 at various places on YouTube. Some of them have different material in them. I saw one version where it had us talking, and then it cut away to something else, a news report, a news program, or what have you. So there are different versions of this. And I originally wasn't even going to talk about it, except that, Rex Reed recently passed away, and I remember him from being in the movie Myra Breckenridge. But it occurred to me, did he review the movie Myra Breckenridge? Because I know that, as you probably do as well, that Roger Ebert was the screenwriter to Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, the Russ Meyer movie. And he never actually reviewed it because of a conflict of interest, although he did give interviews about the making of the movie, but he did not review it. To the death of Rex Reed recently, that Rex Reed did review Myra Breckenridge. He didn't let any of that get in the way, and he called it a train wreck. So I take it he didn't particularly like this movie that he was in the first place. And so I figured, if Rex can talk about a movie that he doesn't quite endorse, so can I. And that movie would be Lucifer 2000. And it begins with, by the way, look at how I'm looking there. It looks so dark. Believe me, in the original 3/4 version on the 1/4-inch tape that we shot, everything looked a little bit more crisp than it looks here. But you know what? I kind of like this because it reminds me of some of those older movies that you might see, like The Late Great Planet Earth with Orson Welles. It kind of reminds me of all these hosts of series like the Ripley's Believe It or Not series, where they're looking at all sorts of interesting things like Bigfoot, UFOs, and in some cases government conspiracies. So at least it fits. And I'm not even going to say that this video should be taken down or whatever. I'm just saying that I do not endorse any of the contents in this video. And I think if you watch it and you look at my reaction, you can see that, I'm pretty much taking blindsided by them, and in some cases I wind up laughing at them, and in some cases I'm just not believing what I'm hearing. Like when we talk about when Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton would lay down in a coffin in the nude, and hey, who knows what they did to entertain themselves at Harvard and Yale, but somehow that has an effect on the government. They were like pre-selected, I guess. I don't know. I don't understand the conspiracy mindset at all. So Jordan and Anthony came in, and we did the two-part interview, and I put it together into one big program, and then they took it and did whatever, the Lucifer 2000, and they were actually out there selling it. I found out that they were selling it, and they were selling it for pretty pricey, like I think $45 minimum, I think. It was pretty pricey. And I even talked to a well-known Christian lawyer. I'm not going to mention his name here because, well, he's a lawyer. But I remember the first question he asked me when I talked about what happened to my tape, that it was being sold and I don't endorse the contents. He said, "How big is your war chest?" Meaning, how much money you got. But in any event, I decided, just to not care, because who else is going to be watching this anyway? But apparently people were buying it. I mean, of course, seeing that there's an ad where it's being sold for a certain amount of money does not necessarily mean people are buying it. But every time I would see Anthony Hilder or Jordan Maxwell in public, people would come to them. They knew who he was, so I wouldn't be surprised if copies of the videotape were sold. As the years went by and I stopped doing cable access, I lost track with Anthony Hilder and Jordan Maxwell, although I did get a phone call from somebody named Steve Probst, who worked on one of the local newspapers, and he told me that Anthony Hilder used to be a record producer back in the days. Before any of this happened, he produced surf music. And one of the songs that he produced was called Church Key.
Church Key.
Which was very popular. And some of his music was used in the Quentin Tarantino movie Pulp Fiction. And he sued Quentin Tarantino or the studio. I want to try to get this right here, but he sued somebody because they allegedly used his music without their permission. But eventually they were able to work it all out, and everything was just fine with that. But he was also in The Hideous Sun Demon, and I've watched The Hideous Sun Demon over and over. Try as I might, I can't find Tony Hilder as he's built in it. If anyone can tell me where I can find Tony Hilder in The Hideous Sun Demon, I'll have many thanks to tell you. But eventually he dropped all that. He wanted to get into conspiracies. We actually did a show where Steve Probst was hosting it, and it was all about music. And at one point in the interview, he did say himself that he had stopped producing music because he wanted to talk more about conspiracies. And of course, that's where that interview left off, because Steve really wasn't that interested in the conspiracy angle. He was interested more as the music producer angle. As the years went by and we, lost touch, I certainly wasn't going out of my way to reach him. But from time to time, the curiosity would get to me, and I'd go over to Google and I'd write Jordan Maxwell, Anthony Hilder, just to see what was going on. And they pretty much criticized every president that was in the White House, from George Bush to Bill Clinton to Obama. But then both of them were defending Donald Trump. They both defended him. These two people who would be, telling the world about people who are engaged in conspiracies that might involve all sorts of horrible things like sex, murder, pedophilia, and all that. And they're trying to go after Donald Trump. And of course, knowing what we know now about Epstein Island, there's only one conspiracy that I would actually endorse, and that is the conspiracy behind conspiracy theories. For some reason, the conspiracy theories stated by Jordan Maxwell and Anthony Hilder benefited someone. Who would benefit from these conspiracy theories? I don't know, but if people are looking the other way for, say, pedophilia Satanists, and they're looking toward the Democrats, and they're not looking toward the Republicans, then maybe there's a chance the Republicans could get away with it, or the people that have been within that group, so that would be a possibility. But that really got to me, that both of them were very staunch Donald Trump defenders. And then unfortunately both of them died, so they're not, I sometimes wonder what it would be like to read their opinions today. And, the people who are warning us of all the corruption that's happening with Democrats, when the same corruption is actually happening with them, and they're like the cover-ups. It's like maybe their story was to just say, hey, look the other way. Interesting, Anthony Hilder was at the Roosevelt Hotel the night Robert F. Kennedy was shot. And he was quoted as saying, great, we need to get more Kennedys. When I read that, I decided that was it. I didn't really want to get that caught up with Hilder again. Although Steve did contact me at one point, Tom, and asked me if I knew that Anthony Hilder had been shot. And he had that he had been shot. So I actually contacted Anthony Hilder just to see how he was doing, and he said, "Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine." And I said, "Do you think anyone was gunning for it?" No, it wasn't like that. And I said, "Well, was it a thief?" He said, "No, it wasn't like that." And basically, he was trying to pass it off like it might have been, I don't know, some homeless person, some aimless person coming out trying to shoot him. And the more I thought about that sounds strange. That sounds really strange. This man, Mr. Conspiracy Theory, who saw conspiracies under every rock, suddenly someone comes out of the blue to shoot him. And it's okay, nothing to look at here. I found that to be really strange. But anyway, he passed away. Jordan Maxwell passed away. And I remember Jordan, the last time I saw Jordan Maxwell, he was having some serious financial problems. And so we were talking about various ways we could put together videos that he could sell. And so I don't know what his financial situation was like toward the end, but I can tell you now that if you go online and look for Anthony J. Hilder or Jordan Maxwell, you'll read nothing but respect. A lot of people respected him to this day, and a lot of people are reading his writings. I do recommend that you watch the Lucifer 2000, just to know that it existed, that if you're wondering how did things get this bad, this is kind of where it started. At this point, I guess I should be offering up some kind of an apology, but I'm not really, because, come on, you're trying to get people to watch your show, and of course there are good reasons to distrust the government from time to time. But when I think about what's happening now in this country, and I think about those days with Jordan Maxwell and Anthony Hilder, I realized it all had to start somewhere, and Lucifer 2000 is a good place to start. Thanks for watching Psycho Cinema Therapy Theater, and if you like what you're seeing, like and subscribe. My name's Dwayne Walker, and thank you for watching Psycho Cinema Therapy Theater.